Right, thanks for staying with us. We continue to watch developments coming out of Nasrec. This is at the 55th ANC National Conference, which is currently underway. We're now touching base with my colleague Chriselda Lewis, who's on standby to give us the latest. A very good morning to you, Chriselda. So the nominations process going on throughout the course of last night, as well as through some parts of this morning as well as some surprises coming in the form, of nominations there. So do take us through some of the conversations happening this morning. Good morning to you.
Well, a very good morning to you, Mkhize. Indeed, a very long night into the wee hours of this morning. Those nominations complete. And then this morning, we're expecting the voting process to get underway. Of course, quite a number of surprises coming through on the nominations. We were expecting that there would be some surprises from the floor. You'd recall about 2 days ago, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, who of course had been vying for the position of president of the ANC, declining nomination in the early hours of the morning. And essentially, whether that's a strategic move, we'll have that conversation very shortly. Is this perhaps a way in not to split the vote of Dr. Zweli Mkhize, who we know is vying for that position with the current ANC President, Cyril Ramaphosa? We'll talk about that very shortly. Tina Peterson, that's a name that's also come from the floor from the Northern Cape. That is for the position of the first Deputy Secretary General of the African National Congress. She now going head-to-head with the Nomvula Mokonyane, whose name had been on that list initially. Also the name of Andile Lungisa. You would have seen, and very shortly we'll play a clip for you pertaining to that, in which, of course, due to his disqualification, he, of course, despite the fact that his name was raised from the floor as well, the chair of the electoral body indicating that he cannot stand as a result of disqualification or suspension in this particular instance. Of course, a number of issues are also looking to no longer the top 6 of the ANC, the top 7 of the ANC, second Deputy Secretary General position, of course. Also, that's some nominations coming from the floor as well. I'm going to bring in now Dr. Susan Boyson, who will walk through with us some of the key aspects that came out of this. And we heard a bit earlier on in our introduction to the show where Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma indicating that, she is declining that nomination for president of the ANC. Professor Susan Boyson, thank you very much for your time this morning. So, look, 2 days ago, I saw there'd been a tweet that had been put out to the supporters of Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, in which she said she would accept if the branches had nominated her. And about turn, we saw her say she's not accepting that nomination. I saw her at about 1 o'clock or 1:30 this morning showing signs with her hands of change. Is this a strategy on her part, perhaps to benefit Dr. Zweli Mkhize?
Undoubtedly, I think that is the case. 2 days is a long time in politics. If you come to a conference and you check whether there is an upwelling of support and maybe has got a chance to make it, maybe a chance to supersede Zweli Mkhize, I think high-level politicians, if they know they are not going to make it and maybe even come in a poor third, then rather do that seemingly wise thing and step aside with dignity and in the process also not split the vote. I have little doubt that that would have been the conclusion that she reached.
If we look at the positions or the position of Deputy President, you have Oscar Mabuyane, the Eastern Cape, of course, having the second largest group of delegates. Then you have Ronald Lamola. You also have Paul Mashatile. And what a lot of the analysis has been saying at this point is that you might see a Paul Mashatile emerge in this position of a deputy president. Does this mean that Cyril Ramaphosa, if this does happen, had failed or simply could not consolidate when it comes to their particular slate? I'm talking about Ramaphosa's slate.
Yes, we've had several statements from President Ramaphosa that it's agitated propagated against slates and emphasizing the unity theme, etc. And that now works together in not propagating a very specific slate. Also, he was very strategic in that, trying not to alienate particular constituencies who might be voting for him in his own position. But in the process, we see two people associated with his camp, basically Lamola, for example, and Oscar Mabliane, running against each other. And Paul Mashatile will benefit from that. Paul Mashatile will, of course, also benefit from his own individual strategy. And that was that he really appealed across provinces, across the different slates. His coloured shows here and there. But he really has run a very strategically well-calculated campaign.
Tina Joemat-Petersen, the Northern Cape, that nomination, the name of Nomvula Mokonyane, of course, had been there. But there you have Tina Joemat-Petersen, and let's talk a bit about her. Her nomination from the Northern Cape, and some have been saying, if you look at, I guess, the renewal process of the ANC, a lot has been said about her.
Yes, indeed. That was a strange nomination in many ways. From the floor, there was a definite search for a person to stand against Nomvula Mokonyane. And after a few declines, there was she, and she accepted. Yes, we know she also comes with baggage, like several others in the top nominations. They're all there, and it's going to be a very challenging time in terms of fulfilling this campaign of clean up and no corruption, no baggage anywhere. It's really a tough goal to get to that level, and yes, it will be interesting to see whether in some ways the de facto Ramaphosa slate unites and actually votes her in.
Lindiwe Sisulu, that has been a very interesting one, from running for the position of ANC President. The Treasurer General position is what she was nominated for from the floor last night, not meeting the threshold. What then becomes of Lindiwe Sisulu? She has had a lot to say in the run-up to this conference, about the current president of the ANC, around the Phala issue as well, which has dogged, the ANC president's campaign, if I can, in the run-up to this conference.
Yes, it is, I would say, a definite end of the road for her. One even wonders about her continuous position in cabinet, but then she's surrounded by quite a few people who have been campaigning against Ramaphosa, and I'm sure he will feel kind of obliged, if not as a show of his own magnanimity, to keep them on there. But certainly there's going to be a lot of scrutiny. But it is such a long road for her, from having put her name in the ring as president to being attempted nomination to get her in as Treasurer General, a position that seemingly nobody really wanted, even if it should be one of the most important ones in the ANC, to not even making the 25% from the floor threshold. That is, I would say, very humiliating.
Not the top 6 anymore, top 7, after, of course, the amendment of the Constitution to accommodate the second Deputy Secretary General of the ANC. We saw some names also come out of that. How does this benefit? Was this a move to try and accommodate other individuals? But I don't really think so in this instance, because the names that also came up were those that we hadn't previously heard of.
Yes, certainly new names appearing for that second Secretary General position. On the one hand, it could be a little bit of ANC trying to get better statistics in terms of women in a top-level ANC. If one adds one basically increases them by 100%. But it's new names coming in there, and there was certainly a search for names from the floor. It was almost getting that chance nomination and sneaking in there. And yes, I think the ANC is suffering from shock in the last few months, and a bit more than a year even, since Ismagashuli's suspension as Secretary General, not having a Secretary General, and then with Jesse Duarte passing, not having a Deputy Secretary General. So I think they overcompensating perhaps, or just compensating for the fact that they had to do without so much of that high-level administrative support in the Luthuli House.
Professor Sandpoys, we'll come back to you very shortly, but one of the other aspects that also came from the floor was the nomination of Andile Lungisa. And after his name had been called out, he'd been nominated from the floor, the chair of the electoral body standing up, Kgalema Motlanthe, indicating, of course, that could not stand on the basis that he had been suspended. Let's take a listen to what transpired in the wee hours of this morning pertaining to Andile Lungisa.
Comrade Andile Lungisa was disqualified because he's suspended by the African National Congress.
All right, so that's what we have pertaining to Andile Lungisa. Well, voting expected to get underway this morning. Prof, I'm going to leave it here for just a second. I'm going to walk towards my colleague Pimani Baloyi, who's going to be in conversation here with one of the delegates from the ANC. And of course, what we're expecting this morning is for that voting process to get underway. And we're expecting perhaps that to take a couple of hours, but we're hoping at least by this afternoon we might have an idea of exactly where we're heading. We'll cross to my colleague Pimani Baloyi as well as Samkele Maseko in just a moment. Colleagues, over to you.
Morning, Chriselda, and good morning to our viewers. Indeed, we are also at the Nasrec Conference Center where this conference is ongoing. Chriselda, as you were stating, lobbying has been continuing. And right now, we've just seen a statement. Last night, my colleague Natasha Piri spoke to some members from Limpopo who said they represented regions in Limpopo who met last night after the deputy chairperson of that province called them into a meeting and told them that they are now supporting Dr. Zweli Mkhize for president instead of President Cyril Ramaphosa's second term. Yesterday we spoke to those people and they said they are not party to that decision. But this morning a development came in where the ANC in the province released a statement through its spokesperson, Mr. Jimmy Machaga. My colleague Samkele and I will be speaking to Jimmy Machaga about this statement. Jimmy, thank you so much for speaking to us. We've seen your statement. We've seen videos of Ms. Razilani, who is your deputy chairperson, speaking to delegates about going N3, as they call it. You released a statement contradicting this. Does it mean Ms. Razilani was speaking for herself? Where does the PEC stand on this?
Let's firstly correct. We are not issuing a statement to contradict Comrade Florence Razilani. We have issued a statement to confirm a decision of the Provincial Executive Committee as well as decisions of branches. Comrade Razilani, like any other leader who is a delegate to conference, has the right to lobby for any candidate of her choice. What becomes wrong is when you make or give any impression that is a decision of the Provincial Executive Committee. So a decision of the ANC Limpopo Provincial Executive Committee is that we are supporting President Cyril Ramaphosa for second term, Paul Mashatile as the Deputy President, Ndumiseni Ntuli as the Secretary General, Comrade Nomvula Mukonyana as the DSG, Dr. Bejani Chauke as the Treasurer, and Comrade Chupu Stanley Matawata as the National Chairperson. So we found it prudent to make this very clear, because no impression must be created using the name of the Provincial Executive. I am the spokesperson of the ANC. I communicate decisions of the African National Congress as far as it relates to Limpopo Province and no one else, unless if it's the Provincial Secretary himself as the head of communication.
Mr. Jimmy Machaga, what transpired then? Because Florence Razilani was seen in that video with Limpopo delegates saying that you are now going N3 because N3 is accommodating you in the form of Stanley Chupu Matabata and your candidates. But when I called Ruben Madaje, your provincial secretary, he said that is not true, that is lies. What is actually going on then when your deputy chairperson says you are going N3 alongside your deputy provincial secretary, Paiscop Makamo, with the PS not being in the know and yourself as a structure?
It's very advisable for leaders of the ANC when they make communication outside to the public. They must reflect a true position of the Provincial Executive Committee. Any communication that is outside the decision of the PEC, I can safely tell you here now, that is not a decision of the Provincial Executive Committee. The decision that is of the Provincial Executive Committee is that we have communicated here today.
And Jimmy, The branches that say have met, the regions, are now saying, since Ms. Razilani aligned the PEC with Dr. Mkhize's campaign, they are now aligning themselves for the chairperson position with Mr. Gwedemandashe. What does it mean? Is there divisions? You are still saying as PEC you support Mr. Matawata to be chairperson?
If you go to the archives of the ANC in Limpopo and look at our minutes, our decision is still the same. If there is any change, we must go back and rescind that decision. And as I speak with you now, there has not been the rescission of the decision of our support to President Ramaphosa. This is a conference of branches and not a conference of leaders. Branches of the ANC has made a decision that we must go and support President Ramaphosa. Anything that is done here that is contrary to wish of branches, it's a betrayal to the mandate of branches, which ourselves as a PEC, we are not party to it. As I speak with you, delegates of Limpopo are seated there. Out of almost 646 delegates, I can assure you that more than 600 delegates are going to vote for President Ramaphosa in accordance with the decisions of branches and in accordance with the decisions of the PEC.
Did you hold a PEC meeting to reflect on these issues with the lobbying that was communicated by Florence Radzilani and with the PEC decision and the conference decision to support Cyril Ramaphosa? Did you have a PEC meeting in the past 18 hours?
There was a provincial executive committee caucus. I'm saying it's a caucus because, one, it did not correlate or reach a threshold as required by the Constitution of the ANC. Secondly, this view was presented and it was overwhelmingly rejected by members of the Provincial Executive Committee. They wanted to stay true to their values, true to their own decision, and to make sure that we remain a credible structure. We don't want to behave here like we are Takalani Sesani, that we take decisions today, tomorrow somebody comes and change a decision. Even if the decision ought to be changed, our view is that it must be a provincial executive committee that is properly constituted that makes such particular decision. But in the absence of that, there is no any other decision except the one that I'm communicating to you right now.
So you've not held a PEC meeting since those utterances by your deputy chairperson and your deputy provincial secretary?
That's correct. There has not been any PEC meeting soon thereafter. But remember, whether there's a PEC meeting or not at this stage, it's our duty because in terms of our minutes, we have a decision on Ramaphosa. We are defending the decision on Ramaphosa, and no one must distort that fact. People can have their own personal preferences, but do not use the name of the ANC Limpopo PEC as an attempt to give an impression that we have deserted President Ramaphosa. We have not done so, and it's still our position even now.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Samkele, there you have it. The spokesperson of the PEC in Limpopo saying they have not made any new decisions. They're going by that decision that was taken at the PGC that was held before they came to this conference. We will keep an eye on this situation and bring live updates to you. Back to you in studio.
Thanks for that indeed. Pimani Baloyi out there with Samkele Maseko, senior political reporter there, just making sense of everything that has happened thus far there in Nasrec.